Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the Flying Goat Farm podcast. Today, I have a really great conversation with Janet Garman. But before we get to that, here's what's happening on the farm. This is being recorded the third week of January, and we've just had a pretty big week of snow. So we have now ended the snow drought. We didn't have more than an inch for over 2 years, something like, I don't know, 730 days, 760 days, something over 700 days without over an inch of snow at the reportable place, which would be the BWI airport. So last Tuesday we got 4 inches, and then Friday it snowed all day. It was that really beautiful, beautiful snow that just is falling down like beautiful powdered sugar. I think we ended up with between 4 and 5 inches of snow, and it's just really, really cold. But all the animals are doing great. Of course, the sheep are almost in full fleeces right now. They will be sheared in March. So they have a good at least 4 inches, or not, that's wrong, at least 3 inches of fleece on them. And they're standing out there in the snow. We give them hay, but they would rather go out and see if they could get anything green under the snow. So they're standing out there, but it's their choice, and they are very warm with all that wool on them. And the chickens are doing great. We keep them in the winter in a greenhouse, and so it gets a lot of ambient heat inside. So far, we haven't had to put in an extra heater, and even the water is staying frozen overnight when it's like 9 degrees. So that's really a perfect time. So today I do have a treat for you. You're going to be listening to my conversation with Janet Garman. She is a fiber farmer here in Maryland. She lives closer to the Bay, near Annapolis. She is an author of several books, informational books that we will be talking about, as well as some great children's books. And she's a natural dyer. That's how I met her originally, as a fiber farmer and natural dyer through the Frederick County Sheep Breeders. And now they have embarked on a new adventure of being an editor and publishing company. So that's really exciting. So I hope that you enjoy this conversation as much as I do. So today I'm with Janet Garman, and I think the first time I met you was at Patty's at that dye day for Frederick County Sheep Breeders, and it's like, what was
Yeah,
that? 5 years ago?
it's been a long time, but yeah, yeah. And
It
I
was
don't think we even really got to talk because we were both teaching. And so
right.
you were busy, and then I was busy, and you had to run off and do something else. So yeah, we didn't
Yeah,
really connect, but I was definitely impressed with what you were doing. So I was so glad we got to know each other.
yeah, and I was too, because you had black beans and all kinds of things, and people were just so enamored of what you were doing. And people talked about it for a long time.
Oh,
So
that's
that was
good.
really cool.
Yeah, that's
So I
nice.
really wanted to know, like, how did you get started in, the dyeing, the natural dyeing? Have you always been a fiber farmer? I mean,
Mhm.
how'd you get into this?
Well, we got into farming because our daughter was into horseback riding and competing. And so we finally were like, what about all that land down there next to the sawmill? Like, who's controlling that? Can we use some of it? And so we actually just kind of started kind of working our way into it that way, and built the farm on this tree farm property. It had never been developed into any kind of thing other than it was connected to the sawmill business, and that's where the raw materials came from. And it was a managed tree farm. It is a managed tree farm. So we started using some of the clearings for the horses, and we got goats, and we just had like we just had weird goats, like goats that nobody wanted.
Right.
You know, like
I've had some of those, yeah.
is that how everybody starts with goats? Like, oh, so and so has extra goats, they're trying to sell them. But then I started thinking about it, and I wanted fiber animals because I love to do all kinds of different handcrafts. And so I researched it all and came up with the pygora. goats, and that was our first step into fiber animals. I didn't think that we could raise sheep because it was such a wooded farmland. I thought that that wasn't going to be possible, which is a whole nother story about regenerative farming and how we've changed our property over. Um, but we eventually, I guess, 15 years into fiber farming, ended up with three sheep from a neighbor, um, even though I said I don't want sheep. And
Right.
now,
Again, like, I need someplace to put my sheep. Can you take them? That kind of thing, right?
exactly. And then, of course, the story goes from there. Is like I fell in love with sheep, started letting the fiber goats attrition out, and we still have one. She's a tangled up old lady, like she's so funny. She still is a character and loves life. And I'm like, what are you gonna wait? You're gonna live to be 25, aren't you?
Oh my gosh. Wow. What kind of sheep do you have?
We have Finn, um, Perrindale, Romney, one Rambouillet, and one baby doll Southdown. And because I thought I had to have one of those, and and I'm getting a CVM next week.
Oh, wow.
Another kind of odd out weather, that somebody has. And he's the same age as my one Romney. And I've always admired the CVM wool at the Sheep and Wool Festival. So I was like, oh, I would love to have him. So, fingers crossed that he's a good fit for us and
Yeah,
gets along with everyone. But he's a weather and his name is Bear. So I'm looking forward to meeting him.
that'll be fun. So now you have all this fiber and
Mm-hmm.
like to do handcrafts. So then how did
Mm-hmm.
you
So then
transition in?
so then the dream started to become like, what can I do with all this? Like, obviously, I don't need um, 16,
Pounds and
17
pounds.
fleeces every year. And so, I learned how to send it out to a mill and get it processed into yarn, which I then started selling, and it sold super well. And then, I think people were starting to get back into natural fibers. We're talking back
Yeah.
20 years. And
Yeah.
I think they were just starting to feel like they were getting pulled back. Like, oh, we were missing something. Somebody told us wool was scratchy and we stopped buying wool. But, you know, it's not true. There's so many different varieties of wool for different
Right.
purposes. So, the learning curve was a little steep. I had to convince and educate people, like this is not true. That skirt you had in high school that your mom made you wear is not the wool we're talking about from your
Right.
small producers.
Right.
Your small producers just learn the intimate details of the fiber they have and they know what it's good for, right? So, you know, I think there's just a lot of educating that still needs to be done.
Right.
Um,
I
so
agree.
anyway,
People think that they're allergic, and there's very few
yes,
people that are actually allergic. And
exactly.
yet,
Yeah,
sometimes that can be irritating, but then you just, wear it as an over sweater.
exactly. Yeah, wear it or put a lining in it, like,
Yeah.
but you know me because we're both in Chesapeake Fiber Shed and the natural fibers groups, but I feel like we have our work cut out for us because people really think that the product isn't for wearing so much, but
Yeah.
there's a lot of things you can learn to do. And I think we need to recommit to using all the natural fibers from linen to cotton to wool to cashmeres and
Right.
mohairs and just find the right fit for those fibers. So, but the dyeing part of the journey was interesting. I actually had no idea that it even existed probably 12, 13 years ago. I was in a blogging group with a lady named Chris McLaughlin, and we became friends because we both had fiber animals and we like to just chat. So, back in the day when we would just visit through chat groups or whatever.
Right. Right.
And so we got to know each other. And then she was coming out with her first book, A Garden to Die For. She's actually considers herself more of a gardener than a natural dyer, but she was um, planting her garden with dye plants, and she wrote a little book, and it was adorable. And it was so inspiring to me because I had tons of fiber around me,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I didn't have the garden, but I had the fiber. So I was so inspired to start finding materials that I could dye my fiber with right here. I didn't have my wool studio then. I was just working out of our kitchen and back
Right.
porch, and where we all start, right, with the pots we love
Right.
to carry
Exactly.
often. So that's how I started. I ran outside when I read her book. I grabbed a few marigolds. I did everything wrong. I didn't mordant the fiber. I didn't mordant the yarn. I wasn't prepared. I dumped it and the marigolds in the pot and turned it on to simmer and just watched it transform the yarn into this beautiful yellow. And surprisingly, it did not fade like it should have, but that was pure luck, I think. Like, I don't know what
Yeah.
happened. Maybe it was an aluminum pot. I don't know, but
Right.
I
Right.
didn't I didn't take notes back then. But anyway, that was my start. And then I was just kind of fell into it and did more and more and more, learned more, took seminars, did classes, took classes and started to share, which was so fun because I was like, I'm not an expert, but I'm going to share with you what I have learned. And it just kind of grew organically.
Yeah. That's neat. So now do you have a garden where you're planting
Now I do.
specific
Now I
things?
have a
Okay.
really nice sized garden, and I just pulled up the biggest, and I don't know if I say it right, elecampane root.
I don't know what that is.
Elecamp Elecampane
Uh,
is a dye plant.
Alkanet?
It's no,
Is it?
it's
Oh,
Elecampne.
okay. I don't know that one.
They sell it at the plant supplier that comes to Maryland Sheep and Wool.
Putnam Hill.
That Yes, that's where
Yeah.
I first got it. I've grown it for a number of years, but it's also kind of similar to madder in that you have to let it kind of get established. So the first one I pulled up, it didn't work that well, but this time I was cleaning out the garden and I just was like, this has to move. And I started to pull it up, and the root was like this, and then there was another side piece, and I was like,
Oh my gosh. So kind of like
so
a almost a basketball size?
yeah, so I was
Oh
so
wow.
excited. So I put it in a pan by itself to dry a little, and you're supposed to like, go through all the steps. So I have to research it again because I've only done it once and see
What
how.
color does it make?
It is supposed to be a blue, but
Oh,
I actually have also heard it can be modified into red. So it's a lot of like, yeah. So I don't
oh,
know
so
how this,
maybe it's a P one of those pH ones
yeah.
that
So
you
I'm
can
gonna have
change.
to really do some research because, like I said, the first one didn't work at all. But now I have so much that I'm really hoping that I can get something out of this. It'll be fun. I love to experiment. That's what really draws me into this, you
Yeah,
know, because
that's very
I
that's very
respect,
interesting. Yeah, I have never
you know,
ever heard of that. So
yeah,
yeah.
I respect those of you that are doing the, more consistent dye releases, but I am your alter ego over here with the
Yeah.
mad scientist pot going like, well, what happens if I add a little of this, So my offerings are often one time only deals,
Right.
even though I take notes, they're very fluid and I'll take notes like I added 4 more grams of something, but I'm probably not going to do it again. That's just me. I just love the experimenting part of
Yeah.
it and the teaching. So, um,
Well, and that's what I've spoken about on the podcast before is that natural dyeing is more of an art rather than a science. Like with
mhm,
acid dyes, you just measure stuff out and it always works. And if it
mhm,
doesn't, it's because human error. But with natural dyes, it's like those plants have all kinds of dye molecules inside of them. And so you get different things depending on the weather, the time of year.
mhm,
And yeah, and then just putting, a little bit of this and a little bit of that and
mhm.
playing around with it.
Yes, exactly. And
Yeah.
that's the part that really enthuses me to keep trying different things. So, um, yeah, I'm not a great business person. So, I'm enjoying the artistic side of natural dyeing.
Exactly. Exactly. Do you ever grow indigo? Have you tried that in your area?
Yes, I love it. And I actually had a great year with it last year. I had two big patches. So I did a lot of the ice water or the cold water
Yeah.
um,
Fresh leaf.
last year.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I was just like, oh my goodness, it was so much indigo. And I don't know a lot of people in our world of natural dyeing, so there isn't like somebody I could just call and go, hey, come over and grab some indigo. You're gonna want to put this in your freezer.
Right, right.
So,
Yeah.
um, I was just trying to use some of it up to just enjoy it. And I saved I saved some leaves. I want to do some pounding or, some um just try to
Yeah.
transfer the color directly with steam. So we'll see. They'll
That'll be
come back.
fun.
It'll come back. It was two strong patches. I'm expecting them to come back.
We have had no luck growing it in our garden, and I think because it's a heavy feeder.
Mm.
And I think we just don't have um good enough soil yet out there. But my husband, it has a hydroponics in the basement,
Oh
and
yeah.
it grew like mad in the basement. And I
Oh
just kept cutting it back, just like basil. It was just
yes.
so easy to grow, and it was getting nutrients every day. Yeah, so it
Hmm.
did fantastically. Yeah. And I
That.
did put it up in the freezer,
Hmm.
covered with water, and that can be used as fresh leaf too. I don't know if you've just
Hmm.
as it defrosts, the chemicals, the dye
Hmm.
goes into the water, and that's
Hmm.
easy to use as well.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah, I used to freeze more of it when I grew it here at the house in the garden for a few years. I would keep bags of wet indigo
Yeah.
and and I don't know. There's so many different things you can do with plants, and I think that there's room there's room in the arena for everyone because we're all bringing something to the table, right? Like,
Right.
you know, I use a lot of plants that are just considered invasive or annoying that just grow on our property, and I'll just go gather them up and see if they will work. And a lot of them have the same properties as any other green plant, right? So you're
Right.
basically just transferring the same principles and practices to a new plant, like with the purple dead nettle and that um, that wild mint that I've told you I
Right.
have
Right.
the
I'm not
well, I
thinking of
just
the name
lost
either.
yeah, I just lost it, but it's huge leaves and I just was like it's everywhere on our property. So it works beautifully. If I will say if you ferment it, it's rather smelly, so don't do that. Because I practically like knocked myself out like with the
Yuck.
I left it a
Well,
little too long. Yeah, but as a fresh plant dye, it works really well. So I like to just go around and try things like that too. And I love the fact that if you have an herb garden and you have a wonderful year with rosemary, rosemary can be a dye plant. So just things you don't often think of because
right.
everybody's talking about the same ones, your coreopsis,
Right.
your rakias,
Marigolds. Yeah.
yeah, your marigolds, everybody's talking about the same ones usually. And it's like, well, yes, but have you tried have you tried this? You might be able to grow it in your garden and it will cost you nothing. So
Exactly. And I'm thinking like with the rosemary, you get a double duty on that because it would also keep moths away. Because I imagine it starts to
yes,
smell like
yeah,
rosemary as you're
yeah, I bet
making
it
the
does.
tea.
Yeah, I bet it does. I've never actually, I don't know. I did a sample yarn with it, but I never made anything from it. But that's interesting.
Yeah, double
Yeah,
duty. That's
I
always
know.
great.
Yeah,
Do
you were
you
you
do
were.
you mostly do immersion dyeing when you're working, or do you use any other kinds of techniques?
I do steam once in a while, but I prefer to just do the kettle, you know,
Yeah.
just soak everything. I usually will leave anything that won't be harmed by leaving it overnight in the dye bath. I'll leave it overnight just for a little bit more. And then I don't even know if this is even relevant to it or if it's true, but with certain colors, especially with the reds, I'll let them almost dry before I wash them, before I rinse them. And
Yeah.
I test to make sure that that's one thing that I have learned to be a little bit more particular about is do I need to use a soap or a cleaner, or is just rinsing well enough? Because the soaps can have a pH change, and if your dye hasn't actually set, then sometimes you change your color just by washing it.
Yeah, that
So
would be bad. And
yeah,
also, like, I know we have a lot of iron in our water,
we
which we
do
have
too.
and you're on well water as well. So I
Yes.
know that a lot of, you know, again, some colors I just have a really hard time even getting because of pH differences or the dissolved solids. Like, cochineal, it's really hard for me to get anything other than purple
Me
because of our
too.
water.
Mine, yes, mine leans towards the purple or end of the spectrum, no matter what
Yeah.
I do. And that can be a little frustrating when you were hoping for a nice Christmas red. And
Yes,
so
exactly. Yeah.
now you have to have an off color, an off green to go with your purpley red.
Right. It's a Victorian Christmas then,
That's
something
right,
like
right?
that.
A
Yeah.
little bit more rosy shaded.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite dye that you like to use?
I would say that my favorite for my use is playing around with madder root.
Mm,
Um, because one, I have not been successful growing it, so it's kind of dear to me because I have to buy it. Um, and I love all the possibilities that you can get so many different shades with that one raw material, right?
yeah. Yeah.
Just by changing how you process it and how you modify it. So that one fascinates me, and I love to mix a little bit of matter into different other colors just to see like what kind of blend that's going to be. Um, my favorite, I think, is actually using the raw root itself. We can get it in different forms. We can get
Right.
ground matter. We can the raw root takes longer because you have to soak it first. Get it kind of ready to loosen up and let go.
Pounded or
Yeah,
put it in the
but then
blender or something.
but then it seems like it just has such a rich option for you, and I love that one. But I don't recommend it to people who are just starting out because it can be finicky. And, if you skip that step of soaking it overnight or for a couple days before you're ready to use it, you're not going to be as happy. You're going to get like a
Right.
paler orangey color. And it
Yeah.
just has so much power if you actually let it do its thing.
Yeah.
So I get pretty passionate about matter.
I
Um,
wonder why you can't grow it. I wonder because we have it. I have it. I can't get rid of it.
I
But
know.
it grows but it's pretty much in full morning sun. And I
Mm,
wonder if that's part of
yeah,
it.
I I don't I just really don't know enough about plants and all of that yet
Yeah,
to
me neither. I'm not the gardener. Bill's the
I
gardener.
yeah, I just kind of put things in the ground and hope for the best. And and then I'm like, oh look, certain things do wonderfully for me. Marigolds, coreopsis, obviously indigo weld that I got from the dyer circle when we got together at your place. Somebody had some weld that they were
Oh,
giving
right,
out.
right.
That did really well. But then there's other things that I'm just like they they struggle. So um
Yeah.
the one that I usually recommend to people when they're starting out is if you can get some, because they like to have like some punch for their effort, right? Like you've got to get
Right.
them in with a hook, right?
And
So
not
I like
probably not yellow, but
right.
you know,
I like to say, logwood, because
yeah.
logwood is pretty fail proof. And even if you have hard water like we do, it's super easy to correct that with a little pinch of washing soda. So, somebody comes back to me and says that logwood was really brownish, ugly, I didn't like it. I'm like, do you have anything super basic like washing soda that you can just
Yeah.
take a pinch, drop it in the water with it, and the result is then like amazing, right? Because
Right.
you
And
just
it happens immediately. You just see
yes,
it
it
go
does.
from brown to beautiful purple. Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah.
that's the one that I really like to offer to people in kits, when they're learning, get the log one.
Yeah. And you can, and that one's also, people are always trying to get a black or a deep charcoal because you can
Yes.
do that. You can change that with a little iron and
Yes.
get that to be a nice
Yeah.
charcoaly color. Yeah.
Yeah. So much fun.
So you have written a bunch of books, and I'm
I
holding
have.
one up here, The Natural Dyes on Wool, which is a fantastic workbook. I love
Thank you.
it because you know, you give the instructions, but then you also have a notes page, which I think is
Yeah.
really good.
Yeah.
And you do some things that are some of them in here are dye stuffs that are hard to use, like
Hmm.
avocado, even though it's hard to get that nice corally color, or the pokeweed.
Hmm.
I Your recipe for the pokeweed because it's just very clear. This
Yeah.
book is very clear. If you're just starting out, this is a fantastic book to get.
Thank you. That book was definitely a heart passion project because I couldn't find one. And what people say, what's the one piece of equipment I need to have first? And I'm like, a notebook. Like you need to have a notebook. You will not remember, you will not remember what you did. You will say, oh yeah, okay, I added another little spoonful of this. You won't remember that. You'll be like, oh, was it one spoonful? I don't know. You start second guessing yourself and then you can't do
Right.
it. So I'm like, the first thing you need to have is your notebook and a pen and keep writing down as you're going along with your experiments, like, or your process. What did you do? So it's like, okay, I can't find this anywhere. I'm gonna create it. Somebody once told me I needed to find an identity because I'm like a farmer, an author, a natural dyer, a yarn seller, and they're like, what are you? And I'm like, I don't know. I can't do the 15-second elevator pitch. I just can't.
Too many irons in the fire. So
Yeah.
show us some of your other books. And I know that you
Sure.
did a great book on sheep as well.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Yeah, this was another one that was just from my heart, and I was so glad my editor picked it up because I was like, I want to just highlight the people that are doing the work, and it's not just my area; it's all across the country. And a lady in Canada who has a lot of knowledge about natural dyes, and um, I just wanted to feature them in addition to pointing out, like, you don't have to have 50 acres of grassland to have sheep or fiber animals, that there are ways to do it. What do they actually need? So the first part of the
Right.
book is more about raising the animals. The second half of the book is what are you going to do now that you have these 5 to 10 bags of fiber in your garage, and everyone in your family is like, what are you going to do with it? So it
And
talks
that one's
about
called the Good Living Guide to
yes.
Keeping Sheep and Other Fiber
Right.
Animals.
And
Yeah.
it's mostly sheep, but I do a little touch on rabbits, Angora goats, alpacas, llamas, and brought in a little bit from experts in each of those areas. And then we just published another book on the dairy aspect of raising sheep. And
Wow.
this was from when I was writing for Skyhorse Publishing. And then we started our own publishing company here in our family. And this was one of our first books that we brought out from Sawdust Publishing, which is a name that kind of ties back to the fact that we're a lumber company
Yeah.
family. And so sawdust is our byproduct. And um,
What's the title of that one again? The
this is
the
the Guide to Homestead Dairy Sheep.
dairy sheep. And do you talk about cheese making and that kind of things with that?
She does, yes. This is by Rachel Hester. She is a lady in Kentucky who has a flock of dairy sheep. And because of medical needs, her family can't have regular dairy that we think of from the grocery store. So they started raising sheep so that they could have dairy. So, yes, there are
Nice.
some uh, recipes and all, but mostly it's about how to raise dairy sheep, what are you looking for? Because it's not always like a certain breed. You're looking for
Oh,
characteristics.
okay.
You want to be able to actually milk them, and milking a sheep with an udder that isn't the right kind is a little difficult. So it's really inspiring. We're already in the second printing. I had no idea so many people were
Wow.
interested in raising dairy sheep. So we sold out the first printing in 2 months.
That's
Right.
fantastic.
It was crazy. And then we have some children's books. We all have a cookbook. We have a cookbook, Homestead Scratch Cooking. This
And
is
that one you have a great Instagram account as well.
yes,
That's
yes, it's
Homestead Scratch Cooking,
Scratch
right? At
Cooking.
home.
Yes, it has its own website, its own um, accounts on social, and
The
it's
recipes
my
look great.
yeah.
All the pictures, it's like they make your mouth water.
I know they're great. This is actually my daughter's project. She thought this up and used all the recipes from her grandmother's that we had collected in
Oh wow.
handwritten recipes and everything. So there's a lot of nostalgia in here, and the history of Maryland crab cakes, which I think is great.
Oh wow. That's cool.
And then we have four children's books under the Sawdust Publishing label too, um, and they're all wonderful.
Chicken math,
This is a
Tully the bully.
young reader, young reader chapter book. This is a
Cisco's best day.
beautiful, heartwarming story of a dog, and it's just so cute. And and then this one I think is going to be a super hit, Chicken Math. I mean, look at
Yeah.
these chickens. I'm already trying to figure out how to crochet one. Um, but look at them. Look at how
Oh
fuzzy they
yeah. They
are.
look
The
fantastic. That's
the
great
art
artwork.
the artwork in this book is so fun. And I mean, these yellow chickens, I'm like, oh, come on. Like,
Yeah.
so we've had a really good first year with the publishing company. We have several new titles already under contract. So I'm excited to see where this goes.
And
It
that's a
was
whole different thing than, milling
I
wood or
know,
raising
right?
animals.
But
Wow.
it's all the reason that we started it is it's because there's so many great minds in the agriculture field, but they're not the social media stars that the big publishing houses are picking up on. They're
Yes.
often the people that are doing and not people that are on social media gathering a million followers. So they're not being seen, but they have great ideas that they want to share and great history that they want to, put out there into the world from their own experiences. So, we do any form of agriculture, children's to do it yourself, to raising different animals or gardening, is what we consider. So that's the premise behind it. It's homesteading, agriculture, small farm themes.
So if people want to buy your books, do they go to Sawdust Publishing
Sawdust
or
Publishing, yes.com. Yep, sawdustpublishing.com. We have all the books listed there. That is my favorite way to have them purchased because, as we know, Amazon for marketplace sellers takes a pretty significant chunk of the sale.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
um, their best deal and our best deal is if they buy it directly from us. But the books are all cross-posted on Amazon too. So,
Okay, that's fantastic.
yeah.
And
So,
if people want to get a hold of you, how did
mhm.
they find you?
Well, I have a newsletter that they could sign up for, and that the link is on my Instagram um, post. And that on Instagram, I am Timber Creek Farmer. So that's the name. I think if they put in my name, that works too. And on
Okay.
Facebook, it is Janet Garman dash Timber Creek Farm. So either way, I tend to spend more time on Instagram, even more time than I would like. But
Don't we all?
right, it's a little
Yeah.
it's a little scary how you can get into the scrolling without thinking about it. But yeah, there's that. I love my newsletter. That's because I like to write. So that's my place where I really share a lot of what's going on the farm
Yeah.
every week. So if they're interested in hearing about, what a farmer is doing from day to day and week to week and what kind of crazy thoughts pop into my head, I'm their girl. Um,
And I'll put all those links in the
Thank
show
you.
notes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
thank you.
that's awesome.
Thank you. So,
So thanks for joining me today. It was really fun to talk to you. It's really, like I said, I love your books, and also you're a great teacher. So if people are looking for a teacher for their
yeah,
events, they should get a
yeah.
hold of you too.
Yes, absolutely. And if they're in my area, they can set up time to come to the studio for private classes, or small group classes. I love to do
Okay.
small
And I
groups.
forgot to say that you're near
Mhm.
Annapolis, Maryland, in
I am.
Crownsville.
I'm right outside of Annapolis. And so if they're down my way, I feel like all of you that I know in the world, in the fiber world, are up in your area across there, because that's kind of where I connected with people. But I would love to meet more fiber people down here in my neck of the woods too. So if anybody wants to reach out, I'm here. So I
That's
love what you do
awesome.
with I love what you guys do up there with the tour. I think that's wonderful. You
Yeah.
know, kind
It's
of nice how
it's
you.
it's nice to have people be able to come, drive
Yeah.
between people's places, see
Hmm.
some, three of us have animals, one doesn't. Um,
Hmm.
but her husband has a train garden in their backyard, so everybody has something that
Yeah.
if you're bringing along your significant other or children, they have something to do.
Hmm. That is so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that because, we're always so busy on the farm on the weekends, I'm always like, I wish I could just go up there and just drive through the tour and, see everybody's place. But I mean, I
Yeah.
know you and
One day
Linda
you'll
just,
have to do it. You'll just
yeah,
have to.
yeah. I'm just gonna have to put everything aside and be like, okay, you'll be fine for the day. I'll be back.
Well, we
So
will we will talk to you soon.
thank you. I've really enjoyed this. Thank you,
Yeah.
Lisa.
Thank you. So I told you it was going to be a great conversation, right? I do hope you enjoyed this as much as I did. You will find all of those links in the show notes. And until next time, happy making.